Connecticut, a quiet, suburban state often associated with affluence, top-tier prep schools, and picture-perfect neighborhoods. But on one spring night in May 2022, a typical teenage house party unraveled into a crime that would shock the entire state. A single knife wound, a high school football star dead, and a 16-year-old boy facing murder charges. The victim was Jimmy McGrath, a 17-year-old student at Fairfield College Preparatory School, or Fairfield Prep for short. Jimmy was well-liked, bright, and a talented football player with a promising future. Raoul Vallee, the accused, was just 16 years old at the time. He was a student at nearby St. Joseph High School. The two boys didn't know each other well, didn't attend the same school, but earlier that evening, their paths crossed violently in a fight that would ignite everything that followed. It all started on the night of May 14, 2022, when a large group of teenagers gathered for a house party at 24 Laurel Glen Drive in Shelton, Connecticut. There was music, alcohol, and no adult supervision. Teenagers from multiple high schools were present, some from Fairfield Prep, others from St. Joseph. But before the party at Laurel Glen, there had been an earlier altercation at Lazy Brook Drive, where witnesses say Raoul Vallee allegedly threw a bicycle helmet at a Fairfield Prep student named Griffin Marcinchek, sparking a physical fight. It didn't escalate much beyond fists and shoving, but the tension lingered. Hours later, Vallee and a group of friends drove to the house party at Laurel Glen. Witnesses testified that the atmosphere was already tense when they arrived. Words were exchanged, shouting broke out, someone yelled, "Get out of here!" Others taunted back. According to surveillance footage in videos later presented in court, Raoul Vallee can be seen walking away from the group, heading toward a dark-colored car. Moments later, he returns, and this time, witnesses say, he's holding something. Then a scream pierces the noise. He has a knife. In the chaos, 17-year-old Jimmy McGrath was stabbed in the chest. According to the medical examiner's report, the single wound penetrated deep, 2.5 to 3.5 inches, directly into the heart. He collapsed on the lawn, bleeding out, as another teenager screamed, "Jimmy's been stabbed!" Emergency services rushed to the scene. EMTs described the setting as pure chaos, with intoxicated teens crying, yelling, and panicking. Jimmy was taken to the hospital but died shortly afterward. The death of Jimmy McGrath sent shockwaves through Connecticut. Fairfield Prep held a memorial service attended by hundreds of students. The McGrath family was devastated. A bright life had been extinguished in a matter of seconds. Within 48 hours, Raoul Vallee was arrested and charged. Though he was only 16, due to the severity of the allegations, he was charged as an adult. The charges included murder, first-degree assault, 2 counts of second-degree assault. Vallee pled not guilty. He declined a plea deal that would have sentenced him to 40 years in prison, maintaining his innocence. His defense attorneys claimed he acted in self-defense, that he was outnumbered and reacted in panic. Prosecutors, on the other hand, argued that Vallee deliberately armed himself, walked away from the conflict to retrieve a knife, then returned to the scene, proving premeditation. The trial officially began in June 2025, more than 2 years after Jimmy's death. The media dubbed it the preppy party murder, a phrase that captured the chilling contrast between the elite setting and the brutal violence that erupted. June 2025. 2 years had passed since the fatal stabbing of Jimmy McGrath, and now the trial of Raoul Vallee was underway in Bridgeport Superior Court, Connecticut. The courtroom was packed, families, reporters, and students all holding their breath. How did a high school party turn into a murder scene? Did Raoul Vallee actually stab Jimmy McGrath, or was this a chaotic accident that spiraled out of control? On the first day of trial, June 17th, Assistant State's Attorney Michael DeJoseph stood before the jury and made his case clear. Raul Valle deliberately stabbed Jimmy McGrath in the chest after retrieving a knife from a vehicle. The act, he argued, was premeditated and targeted. Valle's defense team pushed back hard. They portrayed the teen as a quiet, smart student with no criminal history, who found himself surrounded by an angry group of boys. According to the defense, Valle was scared, outnumbered, and reacted instinctively. The first round of witnesses included EMTs and Shelton police officers who had arrived at the crime scene. One EMT described the scene as chaotic, filled with crying, drunken teenagers, and confusion. A police officer testified that he found Jimmy McGrath unresponsive on the front lawn, covered in blood, and that efforts to resuscitate him failed. Photos of the scene and the autopsy report left no doubt. McGrath had suffered a single, deep stab wound to the left side of the chest, deep enough to pierce the heart and cause massive internal bleeding. It was the only wound, but it was fatal. Then came the video evidence, footage captured on phones and nearby surveillance cameras. In one key clip shown to the jury on day 2, June 18th, Valle is seen in the backyard, walking away from the group toward a dark car. He disappears from view momentarily, then returns to the party. Moments later, the now infamous voice is heard shouting, "He has a knife!" Screams follow, chaos erupts, teens scatter in every direction, and then Jimmy falls. 4 critical eyewitnesses took the stand that day: Griffin Marcinchek, Tanner Chernovsky, Isabella Molnar, and Emily Robinson, all Fairfield Prep students. They each gave consistent accounts of the earlier scuffle at Lazy Brook Drive. Valle, they claimed, threw a bike helmet at Griffin, starting the fight. No weapons were used in that earlier encounter, just fists and shoving. But hours later, Valle showed up at the party at Laurel Glen. According to Tanner, Raul came back angry. It felt like he wanted payback. When he ran to the car and came back, I just knew something was about to happen. Emily Robinson, who filmed parts of the scene, was the first to yell, "He has a knife!" She told the court, "I didn't see the blade clearly, but something shiny reflected in the light when he moved his hand. It was enough to know he was holding something dangerous." The defense challenged the validity of these accounts. None of the witnesses had clearly seen Valle stab Jimmy, and more importantly, no knife was ever found. Police never recovered the weapon, not at the scene, not in the car, and not on Valle. The prosecution countered by suggesting that Valle had time to discard the weapon. He left the scene quickly. That window of time was enough to hide or throw away the knife, said DeJoseph. But the defense emphasized the lack of physical evidence. No fingerprints, no DNA, no bloody clothing, nothing tying Valle directly to the fatal act except the chaos of witness statements and circumstantial video. Then came another perspective, this time from a friend of Valle, a student at St. Joseph High School. He testified that during the party, Raul was shoved and punched by multiple people before the stabbing. He said, "It wasn't just him starting trouble. He was surrounded, and it got ugly fast." Prosecutors strongly refuted this. "We have the video," they argued. "Raul is not seen being attacked before Jimmy is stabbed. Jimmy was not rushing anyone. He was backing up." At this point, the courtroom sat on edge. Jurors listened closely as the judge, Shari Murphy, issued a critical reminder. This is not a trial about grief or tragedy alone. It is about proof, about law. Your role is to weigh evidence, not emotion. As the second week of the trial closed, one thing was certain. This case was far from black and white. The question remained, was Raul Valle a cold-blooded killer seeking revenge, or a scared teenager who made one catastrophic mistake in the heat of the moment? The final days of Raul Valle's trial carried a heavy silence into the courtroom. No more raw 911 calls. No more phone footage from screaming teenagers. What remained now were the cold, hard questions. Did Raul Valle deliberately stab Jimmy McGrath? Was it revenge or fear? And how do you sentence a child for an adult crime? The defense began their closing arguments by painting a vivid picture of Raul, not as a criminal, but as a boy caught in chaos. They reminded the jury that Raul was just 16 at the time, no criminal history, a student, a son, someone who, according to his attorneys, quote, walked into a situation that spiraled beyond his control. He didn't go there to kill anyone, one of the defense attorneys said. He was surrounded. He was threatened. He reacted like any panicked kid would, poorly, impulsively, and tragically. Then came a moment of silence as Raul himself stood to address the court. It was the first time he had spoken publicly during the entire trial. He stood still, his voice trembling. "I never meant for anyone to die. I was scared. I was punched. I didn't know what else to do. I'm sorry." His words hung in the air. But the prosecution was unwavering. They brought the jury back to the sequence of events: the initial fight, the retreat to the car, the return with a weapon, and finally the stab wound, deliberate and deep, straight into the heart. He had time to stop, Assistant State Attorney Michael DeJoseph said. He had a choice, and he chose violence. The prosecution pointed to the timeline. Raul didn't strike out in the heat of the initial scuffle. He walked away, armed himself, and came back. That's not panic, that's intent, DeJoseph argued. And while no murder weapon was ever recovered, prosecutors emphasized that intent doesn't vanish just because a knife does. The wound speaks for itself. Jimmy McGrath is dead, and no one else touched him. The courtroom turned somber when Jimmy's parents took the stand during the victim impact statement. They spoke not with anger, but with heartbreak. "No verdict will bring our son back," his mother said, "but we need justice not just for Jimmy, but for every child who should be safe going to a party on a Saturday night." His father added, "We trusted the world would protect him. We were wrong." The case by this point had become bigger than just one incident. It sparked community-wide debates. Should teenagers be tried as adults? Are schools doing enough to prevent violence? Should parents bear responsibility for parties without supervision? But inside that courtroom, the jury had only one job: decide whether Raul Valle was guilty of murder, manslaughter, or nothing at all. Judge Shari Murphy addressed the jury one final time. "You are not here to make moral judgments. You are here to follow the law. You must set aside emotion, fear, even sympathy. The evidence and the evidence alone must guide your verdict." As of today, the jury is still deliberating. A verdict has not been reached. Raul Valle faces up to 60 years in prison if convicted of murder. A lesser conviction could bring a reduced sentence, or he could walk free if reasonable doubt is found. But regardless of the verdict, two families have been forever changed. James McGrath, just 17 years old, is gone, his dreams erased in a moment of violence. Raul Valle, just 16 years old at the time, may live the rest of his life defined by one night he couldn't take back. In the end, this case forces us to ask, what does justice mean when both victim and suspect are children? Can a single mistake made in fear destroy a life forever? And when the system finishes speaking, who will feel that justice has truly been served? If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to SC Investigation for more true crime cases that ask hard questions and reveal even harder truths.